So as many of my regular viewers have probably tracked, I recently put up a video, probably about 2 videos ago, that actually showed the day of the Let's Go Washington signature submission to the Secretary of State's office in Tumwater. And I want to talk about that process, kind of where we're at in that process across the state, kind of some of the legal things that happen and just where things go from here. So I'm hoping this video explains it adequately enough that you'll feel pretty educated about how this works. Now, as anybody who saw that video knows, and I was kind of documenting, and I was there, I was participating along with a bunch of other volunteers, but the process is that the Let's Go Washington PAC, as well as some other groups that have joined them, Restore Washington and others, that they've basically been collecting signatures all summer. We've talked about this before. I interviewed Brian Haywood, who was the primary sponsor of the Let's Go Washington PAC, in the sense that he had put the most money into that PAC. And so they were out collecting signatures. And if you actually look at their website, you'll see that they're tracking, it's kind of a live tracker on the website, how many signatures they're hoping to get and how many they already have. The significance of the overall number of signatures is useful only really if you understand how many signatures they have per initiative. But as their submission results earlier in the week on Tuesday, when they submitted these initiatives, the signatures, petitions to the Secretary of State, they turned in 418,399 signatures at that time. At least that's the reported number that was made. And if you look at state law, they only had to turn in 324,000. So they turned in 418,000 plus, and they needed, in order to qualify, 324,000 plus, a little bit over. So the logic behind, I think, turning that in is that they already knew they had plenty of signatures on the carbon tax repeal, the kind of repealing the hidden gas tax that Inslee passed, and so they submitted these initiatives then. It doesn't mean that they're done collecting signatures on it. They'll still be collecting signatures on that initiative and the other 5 initiatives all the way till the end of December. But what happens is it kind of helps the Secretary of State's office, if they know they already have plenty, to submit those initially so they can start being processed by the Secretary of State. And then they're going to follow up with these other 5 initiatives, presuming that they get enough signatures for all 5 of the other initiatives. This really does matter. Now, this is kind of unusual because, to my knowledge, this is probably the largest signature gathering effort ever made or done, and certainly in Washington state history. And frankly, I don't believe there's any other state that's ever seen anything like it, where they've gotten this large number, at least reportedly. We'll see as we submit these initiatives and watch them ourselves. But it looks to me like they're going to have enough signatures for at probably all of these initiatives. They're certainly on track for it right now. That's huge. It's the biggest signature gathering effort in the history of our state, and especially for a conservative movement, and certainly anywhere in any other state as well. And it's all been done at one time, so it's kind of a big deal if you can get all 6 of these across the finish line, or at least at this stage. What happens now? I would expect over the next month that the Let's Go Washington volunteers and any paid people they have too, they're going to try to get all the signatures they can in December. And they will start turning in each of these initiatives in their own scheduled time, just like they did on Tuesday with the I-2117, which is the repeal of the gas tax. So they're going to keep turning these in. And the public, you'll find out, and I'll try to report on it as well, exactly how many they turn in each time. But when they go to turn in this next one, my anticipation is they'll also turn in, hey, here's another 10,000 for the repeal of the gas tax. So the number that they initially submitted is probably going to increase by the end of the month. And I would anticipate that happens for all of these. And so they'll just sequentially start turning all these initiatives in. So what happens is the Secretary of State, when they come back from their Christmas break, probably early January, they're going to start going through a math model that's actually outlined in statute, looking at each initiative to see if the signatures match, if it's a registered voter that signed, and if there's a duplicate, like if there's a duplication in the sense the same person signed more than once. Now, the Let's Go Washington folk have actually been scanning all these initiative sheets, and they've been cross-referencing that with the Washington State voter database. So they should have a pretty good sense of exactly how many registered voters they have and how many duplicates they have. The only thing they wouldn't know for sure is whether the signature matches or not. And under state law, the Secretary of State's basically going to come in and take sample signatures randomly chosen by an algorithm, that basically a program that's already defined in state law. And they're going to go through and they're going to look at whether those signatures match what they have in the database. So what you'll probably see is that there will be people there, observers from Let's Go Washington, that will be carefully monitoring the Secretary of State's effort there. And they'll probably have access to those pre-scanned, the observers, I would guess, that they would have access to some of those pre-scanned sheets so that if there's any question, they could look back at the sheets they've already got scanned in. That's kind of a quality control process that they would have internally, and it helps them hold the Secretary of State accountable. Regardless, if they're turning in these size signature counts, it would be highly unlikely that they don't get over the finish line. What was interesting really about the submission, the turn-in there, and probably not too much of a surprise, is that on Tuesday they had done 2 events. One was up in Kent, and for the media, the Seattle Times, Cairo News, there were some other media people up there, kind of closer to the Seattle market, and they were at a gas station up in Kent. That had done a program, kind of a demonstration earlier about what it'd be like if you were paying regular gas prices in Washington instead of the inflated gas prices caused by the carbon tax. But then they did the official turn-in that occurs down in Tumwater. Well, the interesting thing about that was that at both locations, there were 2 protesters that showed up at the Kent location, and then those same 2 people drove down and joined another 6 people or so in Tumwater to protest down there. Now, most of these people appear to be associated with Progressives Northwest or Indivisible. Maybe they wear multiple hats. A lot of these left-wing groups kind of wear a lot of different hats, and it's really the same people that kind of move around, and they're with each group. But they probably are right to be concerned because a lot of these leftist groups especially profit personally from the tax grifting operations. The carbon tax has already got about $1.5 billion, pretty much unaccountable cash that gets paid to them. That cost gets passed on to the regular taxpayers like you and I, but the insiders, the political insiders, they get this big pot of money and they get to distribute it, and some of which inevitably ends up in the pockets of these left-wing groups. So of course they're angry and upset that the gravy train could be taken away from them. It doesn't do any good. It doesn't reduce pollution. Nobody's actually, I don't think, stupid enough to believe that it reduces pollution. There might be some journalists or maybe some professors at Evergreen, but largely other than that, nobody really thinks that. It's just simply an indulgence tax that they get to collect. It's an excuse to collect the taxes and then waste it. However, the indication that those protesters were there for this indicates, at least from my perspective, they'll probably show up and protest each of these other initiatives. So you're going to have this parental transparency bill initiative, I should say, that they'll be turning in signatures for. You're going to have allowing the police to pursue criminals. You're going to have the kind of restoring the typical traditional police pursuit process. You're going to have the no income tax and repeal the capital gains tax kind of linked together. You'll have this no long-term care tax scam repealing. So these are all the initiatives that are going to happen. Each one of those, in one way or another, kind of affects some of the left-wing groups. So I would anticipate that the pro-criminal lobby is not going to like the fact that police can chase criminals. The teachers union and all the people that want to keep the failing education system that we have in Washington to kind of conceal what's happening from parents, those people will be out in force opposing that. And then the other people that want to grift off all the taxpayer dollars that are squandered and wasted by Washington State, they will also be opposing it as well. But most of these things are actually pretty positive. The next step is once the Secretary of State reviews those signatures and they say, okay, you got enough, clearly you have enough to qualify for each of these initiatives, then those get submitted to, I believe, the House and the Senate at the same time. And they have 3 options. There's only really 3 options that the legislature has. And keep in mind, the governor has no input on this at all. So the governor is irrelevant, even more irrelevant than he normally is. And so they're going to basically the legislature gets to ignore it or vote no, which is probably the most likely scenario, I would guess, is that they would ignore it. or they could pass it as law. I don't see that being likely because you have a Democrat majority and they love taxes and they've all passed these taxes. And most of these things are repealing actions the legislature's had one way or another in the past. And the Democrats have been in power for a long time, so it's their insider grifting games that are being potentially affected by it. So they're not going to vote yes. The other option is they could provide an alternative version of the initiative on the ballot in November. It hasn't happened since the 90s, but I guess that's another potential scenario. Regardless, I think it's most likely that these things are going to end up, all 6 of them, assuming they get them all turned in, all 6 are going to end up on the November ballot. And these are all options that you're going to have if you live in Washington State to vote on. And I know people are very jaded, so am I, about the corrupt state Supreme Court, which essentially functions as a kind of a political arm of the governor's office. And so I'm sure the Attorney General, Bob Ferguson himself, who's actually running, he's going to want to try to do something to set back these initiatives if he can. He's probably upset, Bob Ferguson, because he doesn't want these initiatives on the ballot at the same time he's running for office. The logical reason for that is that all of these things are ideas that Ferguson opposes, and he doesn't want people motivated to come out and vote for those, to reduce their tax burdens or to let parents have transparency or any of these other ideas, all things that Ferguson doesn't want. So he's going to be worried probably these motivate other people to come out and vote. This is a big deal. This is the first time ever in our lifetimes that anybody on the conservative side has ever actually pushed this kind of volume of initiatives all at the same time on issues that are so popular in the public area. It's very funny, if you've read some of the leftist articles, they've been trying to pretend like these are not popular ideas. And I hope they believe that, and I hope they just go to sleep and ignore them. But they are very popular. Most people, I think, the majority of people, even in Washington, are going to look at this and say, these are good ideas, and they're going to vote for them. So the fight that I think this shapes up for now is that next year, in 2024, you're going to see a political campaign on both sides. Those who support the initiatives, assuming Let's Go Washington, and other groups will probably be doing that. And then you're going to have the Nick Hanauer, the billionaire that funds most of the leftist groups in Washington State with his friends. They'll be opposing him. And the WEA, the Washington Education Association, SEIU, which is a labor union that basically extracts a lot of cash off the long-term care scam. So all these groups are going to be kind of arrayed, and that's going to be the fight politically before the election in November. So this is really interesting stuff, at least from my perspective, but that's where we're at in the process. One's been turned in, 5 more to go, and you'll know more about this come January, and then of course the legislative session, and next November is essentially when you'll be able to vote on it. Most interesting to me is that it's very clear that if Let's Go Washington has demonstrated the ability to do this once, and be able to pull it off, it's likely they can keep doing this again and again. So that should give people hope. Obviously, Brian Haywood put a lot of the money into this, so it would be probably more sustainable if there were more people who also put money into it in the future and into this campaign. But this demonstrates proof of concept, and it's moving forward, and we live in interesting times. It's exciting times to be in Washington State, and feel free, if you have any other questions or comments about this, make sure you leave those down below. I always try to read them and get back to you if I can. If you love what I'm doing, feel free to support We the Govern down below as well. And I hope that you've had a good Thanksgiving, and this next month I suspect it's going to go fast. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, the future always belongs to those who show up.